So let's get everybody up to speed to current events before we talk about this bombshell that came out today and a lot of people are starting to talk about and find out about. So about a week and a half ago, Steam removed hundreds of games off their platform for payment processors like Visa and Mastercard, all in the name of brand protection. It was so powerful that Steam was forced to add an entirely new policy to basically say, we will kiss your boot, payment processors. We will do what you say. If you want us to remove any game that you think is going to hurt your brand, we will remove it instantly. Steam basically bent the knee. A few days after that, itch.io did the exact same thing. They removed their entire adult game catalog, thousands upon thousands of games. You know, customers, people that bought these games were discovering that they were no longer able to either play the games they bought, download the games they bought. You had developers that realized that they were no longer going to be able to make money. They lost their livelihood, and it left everybody confused until hours later, itch.io made an official statement saying that payment processors like Visa and Mastercard and also Collective Shout were responsible for why the entirety of the adult catalog had to be removed. And what this brought into question for everybody to see is that these payment processors like Visa and Mastercard have way too much power. They are straight up a mafia or cartel capable of controlling the entire world when it comes to cash flow. And if Steam, a massive platform like Valve and Steam, cannot even fight back against payment processors, it's pretty much the end for any other smaller business that is trying to sell fictional content, because Steam is massive. Anyone that plays games on their PC is aware of Steam. They use Steam. It is the main go-to. And if they can't fight back, it's basically over. But obviously this news got a lot worse. First off, after all of this happened, a few days later, the United Kingdom's had a law come into effect called the Online Safety Act. At first glance, this law was meant to protect children, which in a perfect world, that's fair. That's fine. Makes sense why you would want to protect the kids from internet access and being able to find things that are, let's just be honest, really bad online. However, when it comes to any government, any organization, or any company, usually something like this that restricts people is typically not used out of the goodness of their heart. It is not used in good faith. It is used to control and have power over people. And in this case, the United Kingdom restricted the entire internet for everyone a part of their populace, where you can no longer access the internet without providing an ID. For instance, identification of either your face or actual driver's license. You couldn't get on Discord, you couldn't get on Twitter, you couldn't get on YouTube. You get the point. The entirety of the internet was locked down thanks to this law coming into effect, but this law also started to leak in and affect people in Europe as well. And you're probably wondering to yourself, how is this even relevant if you don't live in, let's say, UK, or you don't live in Europe? Well, we're going to get into that one in just a moment, because as you can see on screen, this is related to the United States. So, after all this happened in UK, in under 24 hours, once that happened, once this law came into effect, it wasn't used to protect kids. They started to create an entire situation where they were starting to monitor. They made a police monitoring task force to go to people's doors to basically arrest them or question them if they say anything that is against what the government actually wants you to say. So basically, they're using the law that was meant to protect kids to now censor people online if they have anything that goes against what the government wants you to say. Scary stuff. Basically, the UK overnight turned into a massive police state. There's a lot of people talking about this. Even Stride Ice, a big ReZero leaker, he even comments on this, talking about the situation, on how it's been getting bad for years now, but it's gotten even worse thanks to this situation. But getting into the main point here is that this was the start. It's very clear that there is an acceleration of censorship in just this last week and a half. Now, I've been covering this topic for way over a year now about payment processors and what's happened to like DLSite, what's happened to Pixiv, what's happened to Manga Library Z. I've been very, outspoken about the whole situation. But now that this situation has gotten so massive that it's starting to affect not just gamers, but pretty much entire countries, it's very clear that there is something more going on, especially when you take a look at the new bombshell that came out today and a lot of people are now starting to talk about. So this right here, as you can see on screen, that it's been on the screen since the very beginning, is called S1748 Kids Online Safety Act. This is the official congress.gov site. This is an official governmental site ran by the United States, and this is a bill that has been introduced into Congress back in May of this year, just a few months ago, 2 months ago, and it's been relatively gone under the radar, not noticed whatsoever. Nobody was really aware of this until today. And I am talking about the situation because it's incredibly important, because this bill, ironically enough, is titled the exact same way as the bill that just came into effect in the United Kingdoms. Online Safety Act. That's what passed the United Kingdoms. Kids Online Safety Act. Definitely similar. Now, you could chalk it up to saying that, there's only a few words to really describe what the bill is trying to do, but it's very apparent that there is definitely something going on. Call me a conspiracy theorist or whatever, but anyone seeing what's happened in just the last week and a half can all agree that there is something massively going on with censorship and just these governments' push and these organizations and companies' push to censor fictional media, to censor the internet. It is legitimately concerning, and that is why I'm speaking up about this, because it is actually insane to see such a massive acceleration of censorship. But we got to get into what this bill actually is. So at this current time, this bill was introduced relatively recently. It's just only been introduced. It hasn't even passed Senate, hasn't passed House. It's not even been to the president. It hasn't become law. But one of the big things I want to talk about when it comes to this bill that was introduced is that this is the very same government that is refusing to release the Epstein files, the Epstein list. They're refusing to drop names of those that harmed people, that actually assaulted people. They're refusing to name drop actual criminals. Our government is protecting actual criminals and people that harmed kids. But this bill gets introduced. And looking at the track record of what we have seen in just the last 20 or so hours from the UK, thanks to their bill being introduced on the name of protecting kids and brand protection, basically, it's very obvious it's not about protecting kids. It's about censoring the population and knowing what you're doing at any given moment. And that's exactly what this bill is. It's a Trojan horse disguised with its optics to protect kids. It's not about that. When you start scrolling down and you look at the text on what this early bill has outlined in it, there is some things that obviously sound good, but then things start to become very questionable when you start realizing that there's some things within this that outline that they want to add, obviously, age identification with ID, very similar to UK, but they start talking about overusage of online. For instance, time limits. For instance, time limits as maybe you might be only able to use the internet for 2 or 3 or so hours until your internet access is completely cut off. And then on top of that, they talk about how there would have to be yearly inspections. There is literally a clause in here, if you go down, that talks about every website on the internet that has like a certain amount of traction in viewers or users, they are supposed to disclose the information and the records and stuff to the government about basically how many people are using it, or if there's, people are using their IDs or minors, whatever, anything like that. Just disclose the information to the government, which is already concerning. Now, let's be honest. The government already knows who we all are. I mean, yeah, okay? But the thing is if they're grabbing all this data from you and they are actively getting your, identification on these different sites, it builds a internet footprint. It builds, a footprint on what you've been doing, and they're able to know what you're saying, what political party you're on, what side you're on, how you feel about something. It's obviously going to be used as, to, see what you're doing. Surveillance, basically. That's what's going to happen. And so this bill is, the optics of it is being disguised to protect kids, but it's very obvious that's not what it's about. It is way more than that. It's literally doing the exact same thing that the UK bill did and has been passed, because let's just be completely blunt. If someone brings up the question, so you're telling me you're wanting to oppose a bill that is supposed to protect kids from seeing very questionable and awful things on the internet. Obviously, when you bring that up into a conversation, it's going to shut down most conversation. People are going to be like, yeah, I don't want to argue against that, because it's like, who would want to be against protecting kids? It's common sense. But the problem is that is being used as a Trojan horse to get things in to be able to actually restrict even adults, cause actual issues. So that is the problem here. That this is leading into, as I've already been saying for the last few videos, Shimonetta. We are actually entering into Shimonetta. And I can't believe it. I cannot believe we actually have a bill like this right now in Congress for United States. Now, apparently from what I could dig up, this is something that's been trying to get passed for a while. Like, there's been similar bills over the years. But I want to strictly point this out, that the title of this is the same as the UK stuff. And with everything that's been going on as of late with censorship, there's clearly a push. There is definitely a significant push of censorship on everything as of late. It is multiple countries involved in this. It's multiple organizations and multiple activists, payment processors. It is legitimately horrifying. And so the question is, what can you do? Well, the only thing I can really recommend is, I'm going to say it, call your state representative. Like, really, if you're a United States citizen, you should call your senator. You should call your representative and basically tell them you don't want this to pass. Just bring it up and say this is unconstitutional, this shouldn't exist, do not allow this to pass. Because what's really crazy about this entire situation is that the people on this bill is on both sides. You have Republicans and Democrats all agreeing with this bill that has introduced it or is co-sponsors of this bill. So this isn't, let's say, a one-party issue. It's both sides wanting to get this passed. So don't try to turn this into, oh, the Republicans want to do this. Oh, the Democrats want to do this. No, both sides. It's both sides. Stop trying to fight each other and look at the bigger picture, that there's something going on. So I'll leave it at that. I'm sorry I'm talking about censorship once again, but this is just some really important stuff to talk about. It's extremely important, and I'm glad to see a lot more people are starting to cover this subject, like Asmongold, Mutahar, you have, Bellier News is talking about it. It's really nice to see more content creators covering this, and more people need to be talking about this, because it is seriously important, and people need to understand if we just sit around and do nothing, it's going to get bad. It's going to get very bad. I'll leave it at that, though. I love you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like on this video. Please subscribe. Chibi out.